Hey guys, part 3 of the Strat build. We're going to check this neck for straightness. We're going to check the frets for any problems. We're going to address those problems. Then we're going to put the first coat of tongue oil on here. We're going to get started. Guess when? Right now. Okay, before we get started on the neck and the fretboard adjustments, last video, part 2, we filled these holes in with tight bond glue and sawdust, and let that dry. I sanded these down, everything down with 320 grit. So now you can see the tight bond. It doesn't really matter what kind of sawdust you use. The tight bond always dries to a sort of a tan color. But these are smooth as silk, nice and flat and filled in. So I'm happy with that. And while I was at it with the 320, I went over the neck one more time and did a final sand. Got some of the spots where I thought it was still a little bit touch and go. There are some spots here that are a little darker, but I sanded and sanded and sanded and they just stay dark. So a lot of times it's not your sanding, it's the actual wood itself that's got coloration in it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to change the camera angle and we're going to check to see if this neck is straight, because you don't want bow in it. If it bows like this, you're going to have really high action and it could affect your far ends with buzzing. If it bows this way, you're likely going to get buzzing across a lot of the frets. So we're going to take a look at this from a different angle. Okay, to check the straightness of the neck, we're going to use this tool. It's a notched straight edge. You can get these on Amazon, eBay, wherever. Some of them are really expensive. Stu Mac has them that are like 70 bucks. I paid like, I don't know what, 8 bucks or something for this. But I'm really happy with this. It is, I checked, it is completely straight, it is completely level. And these notches, these are set for the scale on the one side for Fender scale, for the other side for Gibson scale. So what we're going to do is straddle the frets, starting with the first fret with this first notch. So when we put this on here, and I'll change this so you can see it, but what we want to do is look under here and see if there's any light. And I'm going to tell you there is light at this end. And if I rock this a little bit, see, it should be completely flat against there, but this end is high. And since this end is high, that leads me to believe that the neck is bowed this way. So we're going to have to make an adjustment for that as well. But I'm going to change this angle so maybe you can see this a little bit better. Okay, hopefully you can see this a little bit better. It's still not ideal, but I use my phone to record these because I don't have a camera that works right with my microphone, and I cannot focus using this angle. But when I put this on here, it's nice and flat all the way up to about here, 17th fret, and when I tap this, there's light there. So when I push down on this, that's when it's bottoming out. Okay, when that's the case, we have a convex bow. So in order to fix that, we have to go into the truss rod, make an adjustment. And when you're adjusting your truss rod, you're looking at it from this angle where you insert the Allen wrench, and it's always righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Okay, so righty-tighty is going to take this kind of a bow out, the U-shaped bow. If it's bowed in the middle, when you tighten it, it's going to pull back to flatten it. If it's this way, we're going to go to the left to loosen it. So this end comes up a little bit and brings it level with this part. So, and you want to do this a little bit at a time. And it's also good to even let it sit for a while or overnight. So I'm only going to go about a quarter turn. Actually, I don't know if I'm even going to be able to do it with this particular wrench. In fact, I'm not. Let me see if I can find another Allen wrench. Alright, so of course, I don't have another loose Allen wrench this size. I never bothered to buy a set of loose ones because I always had the size I needed, but that's the thing with these. I don't even know where this guitar was made, Japan or China or who knows, but the truss rods often have different size heads. So anyway, got it in here. I'm going to turn this about a quarter turn to the left. Okay. Now generally, when you do turn these, you get some results right off the bat. And you can see I have this down now. We don't hear that tapping anymore. And when I look down through here, I don't see any light. I don't know if you can see that, but that quarter turn did the trick. So that was easy enough. So our neck is now straight. Okay, next step is to check the height of these frets. Now I said that some of these looked a little dinged up, and we'll deal with that, but I want to check to see if there are any that are higher than the others. And another way you can do this is with a longer straight edge, which I have here. And if you take a longer straight edge and lay it against here, sometimes you can see light under here. I'm seeing not much light under any of these. They seem to be fairly level, and my straight edge is not rocking. So what we want to do now is rock these frets. And what I have here is a string gauge, action gauge. When you put your strings on and you're checking your string height for intonation and your setup, it's a handy tool to have. It has some measuring devices, some conversions, inches and millimeters in the back, but it is a nice straight edge and you can use it as a fret rocker. Another thing I use is you can use an old credit card, or where I work we have these cards. So I have some of these I found in a box that were loose, and I keep one regular size and then I cut one down so that I can work on frets that are closer together, because if you have too much overlap you can't rock it properly. But We can start with this. Start up at this end, cross 3 frets, and you want to try to rock it back and forth using that center fret as a pivot. And there's a tiny bit of rocking here on the 3rd fret. Now I went through these earlier, and I'm sorry, on the 2nd fret. Not anything there. Ever so slight there. Good. Oh, can't see that very well, I guess. These are good. Now see here, I'm getting to the point where I'm going to hit these. So we'll turn it this way. Good. 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 Okay, this one has a little rock. This was one of the ones I had written down. 17th fret is a little high. Now I'm getting a little wide here again, so I'll switch to this guy. So I can cross these. These are all good. And there, the 20th fret, there's a little bit of wobble. So the 20th fret, 17th fret, and the 2nd fret. Just a little bit. So those are a little high. Now there's several ways to address this. I putting together a video on doing a whole fret job, but I haven't gotten it done yet. But what we can do is just take one of my fret leveling tools, which is one of these guys. Get these on Amazon, eBay. Now this one, I put some double-sided tape on here and put some 320 grit on here. These are really fine grits. But what you can do is just go on here and go over those high frets a little bit. Just take a little bit off of them. Now if I were going to do an entire fret job and wanted to level them all off to make them even, you can get a big fret leveling tool, and they can be expensive, or you can do what I did and get a level. I got this level on clearance at Lowe's. It's a Craftsman. It's a really nice 24-inch level, double-sided tape, 320 grit, and you would just lay this on top, and with no pressure except the weight of the level itself, slide this back and forth, and you can level the frets and get most of them at the same time. But what I want to do here is just take care of these that are a little high. This one, and this one has some divots in it too. So, and these two. So to do that, we want to protect the fretboard while we're doing any kind of sanding or touch up. So I'm going to show you how to do that with some additional items. Okay, one of the ways I protect my fretboard is with masking tape. This is painter's tape. Works great. It's heavy duty, holds up to anything you put against it pretty well. And these orange ones I got from Stu Mac. They come in 3 different sizes. I bought the variety pack to get some of each. And this helps you if you're doing the whole fret job, which we'll see in that other video, you might need to, you know, this isn't wide enough, so you can use a piece of this and a piece of this, and then you might use a piece of this and a piece of this, and then when you get down to these up here, rather than cutting your pieces down, you have narrow pieces that will fit in here much more readily. You can't even see that, sorry. That will fit into these closer spaced frets more easily. What I'm going to do is use some of this blue painter's tape and just mask off this area on either side of this fret. So you want to put it right up against the fret and down over the edge. Same thing on the other side. Like so. Okay, so now the fretboard's pretty much protected against this. Now take this guy, and I'm just going to gently, if I were doing a few of these I could do 2 or 3 at a time, but since I'm just going to do this one, I might do this one as well. Actually, I think I will, because it's got some rough spots in it. And the nice thing about using this painter's tape is, one of the nice things, comes right off. It's easy to move. It's easy to apply. Doesn't leave any residue. So I'm just going to gently go back and forth over this guy and this guy a little bit. And this takes a little bit of time. I mean, there's still some rocking there. Mostly on this part right here, this edge. So put a little more concentration on that side. This one I'm just trying to get, I don't want to take too much off of that because then it'll throw the whole thing off. Still rocking. Rocking and rolling. I'm not putting, it might look like I'm putting a lot of pressure on here, but I'm really not. So that's good right near the edge. It's still a tad bit high there. Okay, so I didn't take very much material off of that. This one's got some divots in there, but we're going to take another approach to that. Let's rock it again. Let's rock it. Rock it, man. Still a tad bit right there. Just using enough pressure that's pretty good. I'm not going to go any further. This guy, I don't want to mess with that too much. Well, since I'm going to be polishing these frets, and the whole fretboard is going to get covered. It's going to leave that tape there. For the 17th and the 20th, I'm just going to put some different tape on there. So we got 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay. It's good that there are frets to count because I don't have that many fingers. And as I said before, math is hard. So, all right, same thing. 17th fret. Let's make sure we're doing the right one here. Definitely that right one. Now, this side of it's not too bad. Once again, it's mostly on this side. So I'm going to concentrate my efforts on this side. Nice light pressure. Actually, this is not good. This is not a good indicator of what I'm doing. I shouldn't have tape over that fret. So what I'm going to do is cut this off. Just run that right along there. Okay. Now, nah, that's not good either. Sometimes you forget the most common sense things when you're doing this stuff. It's good to take your time. Don't panic. There's rarely anything that can't be undone. All right. There we go. So now. Still a little bit. So, hit it again a little bit. I'm going to go all the way across this time. Try not to make it too flat. Okay, that's pretty good. Now for the 20th, I can just take this tape that I cut off, put this on here. Crease that with my fingernail and then just run this blade right along that edge. And then you can just go from there and cut the rest off. Okay. And then this part, same thing. Okay. Check this. Yep, definitely some rocking going on there. A little bit more from the center toward the camera. Pretty good. All right, I'm going to stop there because I don't want to take off more than I need to. I have this other tool. This is a Baroque fret crowning file. It's got 3 slots, different sizes for different size frets. These are a medium fret, so I'm going to use the medium. There's a wide one for jumbos and there's a really narrow one. This medium one generally does the trick. And what I'm going to do is, just because I flattened these out a little bit, I'm just going to put a very slight crown back on them. Now, here's the thing when you're doing this. It's best to take a marker, Sharpie, and draw across. Now, if I was doing an entire fret job, I would do this for the whole fretboard. But since I'm just going to do these, now what this black mark does is give you a gauge on where to stop. I just want to take enough material off there so that the black mark stays on the top as a very fine line. So I'll go to my medium and I'm just going to lay it on here. If I could see what I'm doing. Okay, medium. And just lay it on top of the fret in that groove. There we go. Okay. Now on here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a very fine black line that's left in the middle. Now some of this, the marker came off. This marker was probably not the best one to use. Didn't dry that fast. But you just want to leave a hair line across the top. And that will show you that the fret is crowned. Very fine right in the middle there. A little bit more off down here. Okay. Now this end, same thing. This one I did a little more filing on. Now you can see that line there. Hopefully you can see that line. Very fine line in there. When you take this marker off, you can see how the frets have flattened out. And also you can see on this one, see the marker stayed in those divots. So, little divots on this one too. I'm not going to go any further with those. It's a delicate process. You get better the more you do it. But this is the Baroque fret file. It's about 25 bucks on Amazon. Works really well. Now you can do this with regular files too. If you have fine files, sometimes I use these files, these little fine files. This one has it's flat, and then on this one end it's smooth. So this is good for doing fret edges because you don't have any teeth going against your fretboard, whereas this side does. But you can do the whole thing with files. It's a little more time consuming, but it also does work pretty nicely. And these fret ends on here are pretty good. There are a couple that maybe could use a little bit of dressing, but I don't know if I want to deal with that. What we're going to do next is polish these. So we got the rocking to stop, and this one's still got a little bit of rock. It depends what you use too. At any rate, I'm going to leave it as it is. Now what I'm going to do is go through and put tape on the rest of these frets. Then we'll polish them up with a Dremel, and that'll be that. Okay, we're going to polish these frets up. I got the neck all taped up. As you can see, got some sun coming in here. I have a Dremel tool. This isn't really a Dremel. It's I don't know what brand. Durabuilt. I got a couple of these. This has this extension on it so that I can use the hand attachments. Very handy. And I have a rack hanger here. I can just hang it up so it frees this hand up. What I have here is some jeweler's rouge. This is a white rouge. It's probably the mildest of the rouges. So basically, start up the Dremel. I have a solid wool wheel on here. I used to use the cloth ones, but they fly apart and you get strings and stuff all over the place. One thing to remember here, now I'm wearing my glasses so that I can see, but is to wear some eye protection because sometimes this stuff flies up. It might be a little noisy. I'm gonna do the first one here and show you how it looks. About halfway done here. I just wanted to show you a little trick. You can see how this rouge gets the heat from the, kind of melts it, and it has all this black stuff on. So sometimes clean this wheel off a little bit to get some of that excess off. I just take a piece of cardboard like this and do this with it. What that does is cleans it off, you can see. All right, anyway, back to it. All right, and we are all finished polishing the frets. A little advantage to the sun coming in there. You can see they're a bit shinier than they were. I think they came out nice. They look nice and smooth, all except for this first one here with a ding in it. But so that's how I do frets. Now I have done them, as I said, doing a full fret job. You know, I've already filed them all by hand with a file, but I like that crowning tool. Works really nice. I use files if I need to do sharp edges. Use the Dremel for buffing. You can use fine grit sandpaper, 1000. I have 1500, 2000 grit. I've tried that, and the results are very similar to this. So the only thing that really does a job on this rouge, I gotta cut that all off of there, I guess. I don't know. All right, but that's it. Frets are done. So I'm going to take this tape off and wipe it down a little bit, clean it up, and then we will put tongue oil finish on here, first coat anyway, and once that's done, we can start putting this thing together and making a low-priced but fairly good quality guitar into what they call a high-end tone monster, hopefully. So I'm going to take the rest of this tape off and get set up, and then we're going to do some tongue oil. So hang in there. Okay, welcome back. All the tape off, wiped everything down with a clean, sort of dust-free rag, as dust-free as I could find, and ready to put this tongue oil finish on. What I use is Form Beast tongue oil. It's stuff's been around forever. I guess it's the only kind I've ever tried, so I can't compare it to any other brand. But what I do is take a piece of clean. This is an old t-shirt that was washed many times. Do yourself a favor, wear gloves when you do this. It's not that it's all that messy or stains or anything like that, but it gets sticky. And then what I also use are these lids from Ice Cream Magnum, ice cream container. And they let you sit it up off of any surfaces so you don't get fuzz or dust or anything else on it. Use a towel, pretty much Cut and dry. I generally just gently shake this up if I haven't used it in a while. And you just pour some on a rag and wipe it on. Sometimes this gets a little messy inside the lid here. Get that off of there. All right, here we go. You don't have to pour gallons out. You can also pour it into a little cup if you want, and then dip the rag in it. Whatever floats your boat. And just wipe it on. I have to be careful that I don't get too much on my gloves. I'm going to do these edges. First coat, just kind of wipe it on the best you can. Always try to make sure I get good coverage. I mean, you can use one coat of this if you want, but I find it generally works a lot better with 2 or 3 coats. I'm going right up against the edge of that fretboard. Make sure I get this part in here really good. And you can see a little bit of difference there. I'm sorry the lighting's not that good. I'm usually not doing this during the day, but today I am. So raise the other side. Sometimes it's good to sit that out of your way, because I have a tendency to knock things over. Hopefully I got this over far enough. I didn't miss anything. See, that's the thing, once you start this, you want to make sure you're hitting everything you want to hit. There you go. That's all there is to it. First coat is on. Hey, you see, I brushed up against this end up here where it wasn't really cleaned all that well. And I wasn't really working with too much. All right, close this up before I spill it. There we go. Coat number 1. The instructions on this say to dry for 12 hours and then buff lightly with very fine steel wool, which is the kind of steel wool I was using on the other side. And I'll do that, and then we'll put another coat on in another video, but for now we're done with this part. But there's one more thing I want to do. I want to take this beautiful red body we have here, and I'm going to take this down into the other workshop and clean it up really good with some naphtha. Get all this nasty stuff as clean as possible, and see if we can get this sucker shined up a little bit. It's beautiful. Doesn't really have any nicks or scratches in it to speak of, so it should come out looking pretty good. So I'm going to head downstairs and we'll work on that for a little while. So be right back.